Welcome to the Heartbeat Podcast, your trusted source for the latest breakthroughs and insights in cardiology. Here, we uncover the science behind every beat, bringing you cutting-edge research, expert discussions, and innovative approaches to heart health. Whether you're a medical professional, a curious learner, or someone passionate about understanding the heart's complexities, you're in the right place. So let's dive into today's episode and explore the pulse of modern cardiology together.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know, we love digging into the latest medical research, and today we're looking at a study that just dropped, like literally today, in the New England Journal of Medicine, November 17th, 2024, hot off the presses.
And not just any study. This one is huge. Over 7,000 patients across 14 countries.
Wow. Yeah, it's a lot of data, so it must be pretty important. And it is, because it's tackling a question that I think a lot of people have wondered about.
Could a common medication actually help people recover better after a heart attack?
We're talking about spironolactone, right?
That's the one. And it's already used for some heart patients.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up for a sec. For those of us who don't spend our days reading cardiology journals, what exactly is spironolactone? How does it work?
Well, in simple terms, it's a drug that blocks a particular hormone called aldosterone.
Aldosterone.
Okay.
And why is that important?
Well, after a heart attack, aldosterone levels can go up, and that can make your heart work harder than it needs to. So spironolactone is like stepping in and saying, hey, aldosterone, chill out, give the heart a break.
That's a great way to think about it. And that's why it's already used for people who develop heart failure after a heart attack. It can actually help reduce their risk of dying.
So it's a pretty powerful drug. Then why do this huge new study if it's already helping people with heart failure? Why not just give it to everyone after a heart attack?
That's the million-dollar question. There were hints from earlier smaller studies that maybe spironolactone could have benefits even for people without pre-existing heart failure.
Right. There was that study a while back, the Albatross trial. It didn't find a major overall improvement.
But there was a signal, a suggestion that it might be particularly helpful for people who had a STEMI.
STEMI, right? Which stands for ST segment elevation myocardial infarction, basically the most serious type of heart attack.
Exactly. And that little glimmer of hope is what led to this massive new study, the CLEAR trial. They wanted to get a more definitive answer.
Okay, so over 7,000 patients. That's impressive. But they didn't just stop there. They also got clever with their study design.
Yeah, they actually tested two different drugs, spironolactone and another one called colchicine, which is an anti-inflammatory.
Double the data, double the fun.
Well, maybe not fun, but definitely double the insights.
So 2 drugs, 2 potential ways to improve recovery. But for our deep dive today, we're focusing specifically on the spironolactone findings. If you're curious about the colchicine results, those are reported in a separate article in the same issue of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Good point. We should mention that.
Now, before we jump into what they discovered, let's talk about the participants themselves. After all, if this study was all about 20-year-old marathon runners, it wouldn't tell us much about how spironolactone might work for the average person recovering from a heart attack.
Right. The average age in this study was 61, and most of the participants were men. Unfortunately, as is often the case in heart attack studies.
Yeah, we got to point out that gender gap in research. Hopefully future studies will be more inclusive.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But back to the CLEAR trial. Most of the participants had experienced a STEMI, that most severe type of heart attack we were talking about.
Okay, so pretty sick folks. But here's where things get even more interesting. Partway through the trial, they actually expanded the criteria to include people who'd had a large NSTEMI.
Non-SE segment elevation myocardial infarction. If they also had other risk factors.
So basically they said, okay, let's not be too narrow in our focus. Let's also look at people who had a slightly less severe heart attack, but who have other things going on that put them at higher risk.
Exactly. They wanted to get the most comprehensive picture possible of who might benefit from spironolactone after a heart attack.
Makes sense. So they had this diverse group of heart attack patients, all taking either spironolactone or placebo, and they were tracking them to see if the drug made a difference in their recovery.
And they had 2 main outcomes they were looking at.
2 outcomes. Why not just 1?
It's a bit unusual, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But it makes sense when you think about it.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the first outcome was whether spironolactone reduced the overall number of deaths from cardiovascular causes or new or worsening heart failure. Basically, did it lower the total burden of these serious problems?
Okay, that makes sense. And the second outcome?
The second outcome was all about timing. They tracked the first occurrence of any of those events: death, heart failure, heart attack, or stroke.
So even if spironolactone didn't prevent those problems entirely, did it at least delay them?
Exactly. Two different ways of looking at potential benefits: lowering the overall risk and pushing back the timeline of any problems.
Okay, got it. So drum roll, please. What did the researchers discover?
Well, here's where the news might be a bit of a letdown. For both of those primary outcomes, spironolactone didn't show a statistically significant benefit.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah. So after all that anticipation, we're left with no benefit.
I wouldn't say no benefit entirely. First of all, even knowing that a treatment doesn't work is incredibly valuable. It potentially saves thousands of patients from taking a medication that might not help them and could even have side effects.
True. It's just as important to know what doesn't work as what does. But before we move on to the side effects, can you explain what statistically significant actually means in this context?
Sure. Basically, they saw a slight trend toward fewer heart failure events in the group taking spironolactone. But it wasn't enough to say for sure that the drug was responsible for the difference. It could have just been random chance.
So even though there was a hint of a positive effect, it wasn't strong enough to be conclusive.
Exactly. And that's where the importance of these large, rigorous trials comes in. They help us sift through the data and determine whether a treatment truly makes a difference.
Okay, so statistically speaking, no clear winner. But as you mentioned, every drug has potential risks as well as benefits. So let's talk about what the CLEAR trial revealed about the side effects of spironolactone.
All right, well, one notable side effect was an increase in hyperkalemia, which means high potassium levels in the blood. This was significant enough that some people had to stop taking the medication.
Now, I know potassium is important for our bodies, especially for the heart. But what makes high potassium a concern?
You're right, potassium is essential. But like many things in life, it's all about balance. When potassium levels get too high, it can disrupt your heart rhythm, which can be dangerous.
So spironolactone was messing with that delicate potassium balance in some patients. Were there any other side effects they noted?
Yes. There was one more that we should mention, and it can be a bit, shall we say, sensitive for some men. The study found that spironolactone also led to an increase in gynecomastia.
For anyone who's not familiar with that term, we're talking about breast enlargement in men.
Precisely. It's a known side effect of spironolactone. And while it's not life-threatening, it can be an unwelcome and embarrassing side effect for some men.
Definitely something to consider. So here we are, a drug that, at least in this study, didn't show a clear benefit for most heart attack patients and does come with some potentially unpleasant side effects. So where do we go from here? Is spironolactone off the table entirely for heart attack recovery?
Not necessarily. Remember, research is an ongoing process, and even studies that don't give us the answer we hope for can still be incredibly valuable.
Right. They help us refine our understanding and point us in new directions.
Exactly. In this case, the CLEAR trial raises some important questions that warrant further investigation. For instance, the study had a high dropout rate, meaning a lot of people who started the study didn't finish it. That makes it harder to be completely confident in the results.
So it's possible that the true benefit of spironolactone, if there is one, is smaller than they could detect with the number of people who completed the study.
There's one possibility. And we also need to remember those subgroups we discussed earlier. Perhaps there are specific characteristics that might make someone more likely to respond well to spironolactone after a heart attack. We just need more targeted research to figure out who those individuals might be.
And there's also the question of those newer medications, right? You mentioned earlier that they tested another drug alongside spironolactone in this trial.
Yes. Colchicine was the second drug in the study. And while we're not diving into those specific results today, it does raise the question of whether there might be other, even better options out there. The researchers actually highlighted some promising trials of a drug called finerenone, which targets the same hormone pathway as spironolactone, but in a more selective way.
So this study might be closing the door on spironolactone as a universal wonder drug for heart attack recovery, but it's also opening up new avenues for exploration.
And that's what makes research so exciting. Always pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Yeah, it's all about progress, not perfection.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll delve deeper into those intriguing possibilities and talk about what this research means for the future of heart health. Welcome back to our deep dive into the latest research on heart attack recovery. Before the break, we were discussing the somewhat surprising findings of the CLEAR trial, which showed that the drug spironolactone didn't have the widespread benefits that some had hoped for. But as we were saying, even those negative results offer valuable insights and spark new questions.
Absolutely. Science is all about building on what we know. And sometimes learning that something doesn't work is just as important as discovering something that does. It helps us refine our understanding and avoid giving patients medications that might not be helpful and could even have downsides.
So given that this study didn't show a clear benefit for spironolactone in a broad sense, what's the takeaway for you, the listener, if you or someone you know is recovering from a heart attack?
The key message here is to talk to your doctor. This study doesn't mean that spironolactone is useless, but it does highlight the importance of personalized medicine. What works for one person might not work for another. And your doctor can help you weigh the potential benefits and risks based on your individual situation.
It's all about having that conversation, being informed, and making decisions together with your healthcare provider. Now, I know some people might be feeling a bit discouraged by these findings. After all, there was so much hope writing on spironolactone. But I think it's important to remember that research is a journey, not a destination.
I couldn't agree more. And this particular study, even with its negative results, is a stepping stone toward a more personalized approach to heart attack recovery. It opens up new avenues for exploration and highlights the importance of continued research.
So where do we go from here? What are some of the intriguing questions that this study raises? I know we touched on a few before the break.
One of the most compelling questions is whether there are specific subgroups of heart attack patients who might benefit from spironolactone. Even if it wasn't effective for everyone in this study, we need to delve deeper into those individual variations, perhaps exploring new biomarkers or even genetic predispositions that could help predict who might respond well to this medication.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we're moving towards a more tailored strategy where treatment is based on your unique biology and circumstances. That's really exciting. It's like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of personalized medicine.
It is exciting, and this study is a perfect example of how research can drive that progress. It also underscores the need for ongoing investigation into new and potentially better treatment options. Remember those promising trials of Spironolactone that we mentioned earlier? Those findings suggest that there might be other medications out there that target the same pathway as spironolactone, but with fewer side effects
or
greater effectiveness.
That brings us to another important point, the side effects of spironolactone. We talked about the increased risk of high potassium levels and the potential for gynecomastia in men. So even if future research does identify specific subgroups who might benefit from spironolactone, those side effects would still need to be carefully considered.
Absolutely. It's all about balancing the potential benefits with the potential risks. And that's a conversation you need to have with your doctor. No one should be making these decisions on their own.
Right. This information is meant to empower you to have more informed conversations with your healthcare provider, not to replace that relationship. And speaking of being informed, I have a question that came to mind while we were prepping for this deep dive. It's something that the study itself didn't directly address.
I'm intrigued. What's on your mind?
Well, we talked about the potential for personalized medicine, but I'm curious about the timeline. How long do you think it will be before we can reliably identify those subgroups of patients who might benefit from spironolactone? Are we talking years?
Decades?
Decades.
That's a great question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer. Scientific progress can be unpredictable. Sometimes breakthroughs happen quickly, and other times research moves at a slower pace. But I'm optimistic that with the advances in genetic testing, biomarker research, and big data analysis, we're moving in the right direction.
So it might not happen overnight, but the future of personalized medicine for heart attack recovery looks promising. That's a hopeful message for anyone who's been through this experience or knows someone who has.
Absolutely. And I think this study, even with its somewhat unexpected findings, reinforces a crucial message. Science never stands still. We're constantly learning, refining our understanding, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And that's what makes this field so exciting.
We're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts on what this research means for the future of heart health.
It's a journey we're all on together, and studies like this help light the path forward.
That's a great way to put it. So if we zoom out a bit from the specifics of the study, what does it tell us about the bigger picture of heart attack recovery? What's the overall message for someone listening who might be thinking, okay, so this one drug might not be the answer, but what can I do to help my heart heal and stay healthy?
That's where the concept of comprehensive care comes in. This study reinforces that recovering from a heart attack isn't just about one medication or one intervention. It's about a holistic approach that encompasses lifestyle changes, managing risk factors, and cardiac rehabilitation programs.
It's like a multi-pronged attack on heart disease, right? You can't just rely on a magic pill.
Exactly. Lifestyle changes play a huge role. Things like diet, exercise, quitting smoking, those all have a significant impact on your heart health. And then there's managing risk factors. If you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or diabetes, getting those under control is essential.
So it's about working with your doctor to address all those different pieces of the puzzle. It's not just about treating the heart attack itself, it's about preventing future problems.
Precisely. And then there are cardiac rehabilitation programs, which can be incredibly beneficial. These programs combine exercise education and support to help you regain strength, improve your heart health, and reduce your risk of future cardiac events.
So it's really a team effort, your doctor and potentially other healthcare professionals working together to give your heart the best chance at a full recovery.
Exactly. And this study, even with its focus on a specific medication, underscores that holistic approach. It reminds us that there's no quick fix, but there are many things you can do to support your heart health after a heart attack.
And that's such an empowering message. It puts you in the driver's seat of your own recovery.
I completely agree. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this deep dive, the power of being informed and proactive about your health. This study is a great example of how research can empower patients to have more meaningful conversations with their doctors and make decisions that are right for them.
It's not just about passively receiving information. It's about engaging with it, asking questions, and advocating for yourself.
Exactly. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to dig deeper into the source material. The full study in the New England Journal of Medicine is a fascinating read, even if you're not a medical professional. You might be surprised by how clearly it's written.
I love that you said that. Sometimes I think people are intimidated by scientific research like it's this impenetrable wall of jargon. But there's so much valuable information in those studies that's directly relevant to our lives. And honestly, some of them are even, dare I say, enjoyable to read.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
There are researchers out there who have a real knack for making complex topics engaging and even on occasion a bit humorous.
Wit in a scientific paper. That's a deep dive I'd sign up for.
But seriously, you're right. The more we can bridge that gap between the scientific community and the public, the better equipped we'll all be to make informed decisions about our health.
Absolutely. And studies like this one, even when they don't give us the definitive answer we might have hoped for, push that conversation forward and help us get closer to the truth. Speaking of pushing the conversation forward, there was one question that kept coming up for me as we were prepping for this deep dive. Something that the study itself didn't really address.
Oh, I'm all ears.
Well, we talked about how the overall results for spironolactone were negative, but there was that hint, that suggestion of a possible benefit for certain subgroups of patients. So my question is this. Could there be specific characteristics, maybe certain biomarkers in the blood or even genetic predispositions, that might make someone more likely to respond to spironolactone after a heart attack? Is that something researchers are looking into?
That is a fantastic question, and it gets to the heart of what we were talking about earlier, personalized medicine. Even a large, well-designed study like this can't capture every variable that might influence how an individual responds to a treatment. It's like trying to fit everyone's unique health journey into a neat little box, and we know it's just way more complex than that.
Right. Everyone's body is different. Everyone's heart attack is different. Everyone's recovery is different. So are we on the right track to figuring out those individual differences?
I believe we are. The field of personalized medicine is advancing rapidly, and with the tools we have now, genetic testing, biomarker research, and sophisticated data analysis, I think we have a real shot at unlocking those mysteries.
So even though this study didn't give us the definitive answer about spironolactone, it might be a stepping stone towards something even bigger. A future where treatments are tailored to each person's unique biology and needs.
Precisely. And that's what makes science so fascinating. It's a never-ending quest for knowledge. And even when we encounter setbacks or unexpected results, they often lead us to new and even more exciting discoveries.
I love that perspective. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about constantly refining our understanding and getting closer to the truth.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end our deep dive on.
I agree. This study might not have given us all the answers we were hoping for, but it has definitely sparked a lot of important questions and given us plenty to think about.
And that's what it's all about, keeping the conversation going, pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and ultimately improving the lives of people who have been affected by heart disease.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep those hearts healthy.
Thank you for tuning in to the Heartbeat Podcast, where we uncover the science behind every beat. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated with our latest discussions and insights. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, feedback, or questions, and let's continue exploring the pulse of modern cardiology together. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep your heart healthy.